you all for coming. Thank you so much for being here. There we go. There are the microphones. I knew there were other microphones.
Who are you?
It's been a few years since we've been able to do this.
Who are you?
Who am I? Oh, where's Lisa Taylor? Lisa Taylor would always tell me, get up there and introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Bart Weiss. Thank you very much. I feel like I'm at a birthday party with all my friends here. So I really wanted to show this clip here because, you know, there are a lot of award shows and a lot of awards, but nothing looks as great as the Ernie Kovacs Award. And Greg Metz, are you here? Greg, will you stand up? Where's Greg? Greg is a great artist, and Greg and I were on a group of people that started what was the MAC at the time, and really a major force in, you know, alternative arts programming in the city, and we're just so happy to have him and to have him make this thing. So I really, really, really appreciate it. So this year I was thinking about all the great people that we've had. So in one of the reels we'll show you, there's kind of a countdown of all the people. And it's just kind of awe-inspiring that all these great people have come to Dallas to honor the spirit of Ernie Kovacs. So the keeper of Ernie Kovacs' stuff is Josh Mills. Josh, you want to come on out here? So Josh, you can have the cable. Cable. And I'll pick this one. Okay.
And I'm Josh Mills.
So there you go. So Josh, what relation do you have to this Ernie Kovacs fellow?
So my mom was an actress, Edie Adams. And,
so wait a minute. How many of you know of Edie Adams as a singer? As an actress? How many of you know her from cigar advertisements?
That was the bane of my existence when I was 14. You're a mother.
So, do you want to talk about why it's important to preserve the work of Ernie Kovacs and how that's happened over the years?
Yeah, I mean, essentially in about 1963, someone informed my mom that Ernie's shows were being used as weather reports, and they were taking the tapes and using them for game shows. And they were just blank tapes because what was the point of actually saving or preserving anything in 1963? And my mom said, oh, no. And she got a lawyer, got a quitclaim, and said, anything that says Kovacs, I will buy. And this is 1963, so this is not with any other forethought of, you know, where else is it going to show? There's no VHS, there's no DVD, there's no streaming, there's no nothing. But she just said his stuff was very important and it had to be saved. And she spent, 35, 40 years preserving it in storage. And that's why it's here today.
And it's so critical that we preserve things from the past to know about it. And particularly with videotape, there were people who just well, we need to erase that to, put whatever else is. People were too cheap to save the past. And this is very important to preserve. There's so much of this that every late night comedian steals, right?
Well, and also, all the Johnny Carson Tonight shows in New York are gone because they dumped them in the river, because who would ever want to watch that again? So the fact that this exists, there's about 150 half hours, is pretty important. So I'm kind of keeping it going, trying to make my mom proud, because if I didn't, I know somehow she would tell me, you're not doing the right thing.
So Josh is one of the group of people that help us select the person who gets the Ernie Kovacs Award. So would you want to tell us why you think this mystery person, who is no longer a mystery because you all know who he is, why did you pick out Franken?
Well, there's a through line, I think, from Ernie to Saturday Night Live to Monty Python to Letterman and Kovacs, and I think that, I mean, I was definitely influenced by Saturday Night Live and the writing and the performing, so I really just think that Al Franken sort of embodies the originality of Kovacs and
Absolutely.
the, you know, weirdness and the bizarreness of Ernie, which I think is important too.
Okay, so we are going to watch some selection of work from Ernie Kovacs. So this is your Ernie Kovacs School. And I put together a compilation of like 3 different bits that I intercut together. So let's watch that. Now, wasn't that really awesome? And to think about how early that was in television, and of course, the time when he gets that straight gin, he was doing live television in Philadelphia, so that was live. And so those reactions were quite real. So before we get to Al, I just want to say, doesn't the stage look amazing? So all of the projection out there, here, and out in the lobby was done by Lightware, Cameron and Courtney Ware, who just did this amazing, amazing job. And it's just really great. And Adam Dietrich sort of filled out the rest of this. So we've got great people that help us. There are so many great people that help us do this. But now it's time we're going to show some clips of Al Franken, and then Al Franken will be with us to tell us all about the cool things that he's done in his life, including being the U.S. Senator. How often does anybody get to be on the stage with a U.S. Senator? So here are some clips from Al Franken. All right. He's good enough, he's smart enough, and by gosh, a lot of people love him. Al.
Deserve this award, by the way.
Oh, yes, you do.
No, I don't. I mean, Ernie Kovacs played with the medium at the beginning of the medium.
Yeah.
And what he did was absurdity, and yeah, he led the way. Of course, it was Python. Of course, it was, but Bob and Ray.
Yeah.
That kind of absurdity. Letterman, Conan O'Brien. I don't hold a candle to that guy, and I don't deserve this award, but I'm going to take it.
Well, I hope
I've got a place on my shelf for it.
So, what I would say to that is, I don't think that anything has changed the culture and how we think about comedy more than Saturday Night Live. And you were there at the very beginning.
Right.
And
No, the show, yeah. And here's the thing I would say about Kovacs. The stuff that you just saw of his is the stuff I love the most is when he's clearly having a gas. And
like having a drink.
And he clearly is doing this for himself. I mean, he's amusing himself. And that was always the best stuff on SNL. And it's always the best stuff. And I was actually talking to Conan about this because he should get the friggin' award. But, and...
Hold up, we'll take him down here.
Yeah. But I would sometimes have TV critics remember once I got a call from TV Critic, and who do you do, what's the audience that you're doing the comedy for? Who you're targeting? And it's ourselves. You know, when you're writing and when you're writing with performers, and, you know, we used to do the show, we used to write the show, had very bad work habits. And we would do it on Tuesday nights from till 3 or 4 in the morning. And we would just, my favorite memories of SNL was just rolling on the floor laughing. And that's what you do comedy for, is you do it for yourself and the other comedians, right?
So do you want to talk about like the work week at SNL? Because like, so Tuesday, like the show is on Saturday night. What happens on Sunday? How did that work week work?
Well, on Sunday...
Sunday you get to sleep.
Well, this is what happens. You know, when you end the show at 1 o'clock, and you've been building to this, and your energy, you know. So then the cast is getting out of their makeup and out of their costumes, and so we have the party. The after show party starts around 1:45 at some restaurant that we go. And everybody just talks about what happened on the show. And it goes until 3 or 4 in the morning. And then the next day, you sleep until at least, you know, noon or 1 or 2. And you try to think of, if you have a show the next week, then you try to think of stuff for the next week. But one year, my son decided to play hockey, and there's not a lot of ice time in New York, so I had to get up at 6 in the morning.
On Sunday morning?
On Sunday morning, it was miserable. And he didn't like hockey ultimately, so...
And you didn't help him make that decision of not liking hockey?
No. I'll tell this story. Okay, do you remember Beverly Hills 90210?
Not fondly, but I remember.
Okay. Well, one week, Jason Priestley, we knew was going to be the host. And when you're a writer for the show, you know that the big sketch is going to be the Beverly Hills 90210 sketch, right? So, 4 in the morning, of course, it's like, I'd never watched Beverly Hills 90210, never. But I wanted to be the guy, I wanted to write the sketch. Because every writer wants to be the guy who writes the big sketch. But I had seen ads for it, I had seen promos for it, and very often they do like, this week, very special 90210. And there'd be like a intervention on one of the kids who's an alcoholic or taking drugs. So I'm thinking, and I figured out, and so on Monday, Jason Priestley's there, we have a 5 o'clock in the afternoon meeting, everybody we're in Lauren's office, it's mob, people are sitting on the floor, I'm sitting on the floor, and Lauren introduces Jason Priestley, and then, okay, ideas, my hand shoots up, and I said, I got the 90210 sketch, and the other writers, and I go, okay, here it is, it's a very special 90210. The Postal Service has changed their zip code. And all the writers, oh fuck, he's got it. And I'd never seen the show. So I got, you know, the video, the research team got all me the videos, and I read it, and it was, you know, it was a crisis.
So Monday...
So that's what you do on Sunday.
On Sunday you think about what to do, and then Monday you get in there and you have this meeting with Lauren and everybody there,
Yeah.
and everybody throws out ideas, right?
Yeah, and very often they're fake ideas, because you don't have any ideas. And we all know it too, except the host doesn't.
And then...
So we'd always, like Lauren would always go, you know, you go, this week our host is, you know, Burt Reynolds. And then I go, and everyone applaud. And then I go, and next week, Steve Martin. And everyone go, yeah! That's how we welcomed our host.
So then, like, how does the process of what gets written happen for that?
Okay, so then, as I said, we had bad work habits. And so on Monday after that meeting, I'd go home. I had kids. And that part, for some years I did. And then on Tuesday, you come in noon, and start kicking around ideas with people. And we would just fuck off until late and then start writing. And my favorite, people have always asked me, what's your favorite moments from SNL? And it always was 3 in the morning or 2 in the morning or whatever it was, or on the 17th floor writing with other writers and writing with the cast members and just falling on the floor laughing. That's my favorite. You know, Conan, during COVID, he did the show by Zoom and stuff like that, and he said to me, you know, the reason I went into comedy was to be in a room with a lot of funny people.
Yeah.
And during COVID, it just wasn't fun. That was the most fun. And so that's what we did Tuesday night. Wednesday, you have a read-through in the afternoon, and then then the show gets chosen after the read-through, what we're going to block on Thursday and Friday.
And is there like competitive stuff between the writers about?
There is. You know, when we started the show in '75, there were only like 12 writers and there were 7 cast members, and it was less competitive then. And we all worked together. And when the show really worked well, we all worked together. I mean, you knew what other writers' strengths were. And we collaborated a lot, and you teamed up with others. And I loved writing with other people and with cast members. And Tom and I wrote a lot with Aykroyd, and you know, other people wrote, like Zweibel wrote with Gilda a lot. And it was, you know, Woody Allen once said comedy is either easy or it's impossible. And when it's impossible, it's rough. But, you know, we collaborated a lot in those days.
So one of the things I was curious about is, so before you did SNL, you did a lot of stand-up with your partner, and you traveled around. Oh, I do want to tell the story about when did you know you were successful?
Oh, well, I grew up in Minnesota, and my parents were both from the East Coast, and we moved out to Minnesota when I was 4 years old. And in Minnesota at that time, there was no seafood. There was no. So I had family in New York, and we'd go to New York, and I'd have shrimp in New York, and
like a good Jewish person.
We were Reform, so I love shrimp, and
most Jews.
I love shellfish, and so I thought I'll be a success when I can eat as much shrimp as I want. And Tom and I, before SNL, did a gig at Harrah's in Reno, and for our show they had a reception with just this big table of shrimp. And when I made it, I eat as much shrimp as I want.
Totally awesome. So, from stand-up, you get hired at SNL, which is just an incredible, you know, it's wonderful. Thank God it happened.
Thank God, yeah.
But you've been doing stand-up, and in stand-up, you have an audience in front of you, and it's just you and the material and your partner. When you start working for Saturday Night Live, you have to think about how does comedy work when A, I'm not necessarily performing it, and B, you have sets and props and all of these other things. So how is your writing process and thinking about comedy different when you're doing it for the show?
Well, sketch comedy is obviously different than stand-up.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'd watched, like, I remember the way we got the job is Tom and I were doing stand-up like at the Comedy Store in LA. And this agent, William Moore's agent, saw us and invited us into his office, said, "You guys, I love your material. Have you ever thought about writing for TV?" And I said, "Well, yeah, but it will, what would you like to write for?" I said, "There's nothing right for us now. The shows were the Carson, Tonight Show, which was really great, but we didn't write like the Carson Mighty Art Players, we weren't right like his monologue. And then there was Carol Burnett Show, which was a great show, but it was just generationally very different from us. And then there was Sonny and Cher was on at the time.
I was just wanted to see you writing for Sonny and Cher.
It was not a good show. It was not a great show. And the Smothers Brothers had been canceled because of its politics. So he said, so I said, "There's nothing that we can write for now." He said, "Write the show you'd like to see." So we put a package together that had a newscast, it had a commercial parody, it had a sketch, which was a parody of the Sonny and Cher show. And we did a conceptual film, and that was our package, and it was 14 pages long. I still remember this because in years since, anytime a young writer is somebody's young who wants to get into writing, and it's somebody's nephew or something, they give me 50 pages, and you can tell after a half a page if there's anything there, and they go, "I'll give you more."
I'm a teacher, I can tell you that.
Yeah, of course, you know that better.
Writing, is that for? But
I love sketch comedy. Growing up. I love the Danny Kaye show. I love all these different shows. I love That Was Who It Was. I love Kovacs. I love, and Kovacs Laughing is definitely in that line of stuff that really was influenced by Kovacs. And so I always loved sketch comedy, and I can't remember if I saw Kovacs live or whether I saw it later. I can't remember exactly when I first saw it, but just it was crazy how great it was. Soupy Sales, kind of. So there's this, but I just love sketch comedy.
and do you still have those 14 pages? Because,
I don't, but I know exactly what they were. I remember them completely.
But it's an amazing document because there in those 14 pages is the blueprint for Saturday Night Live.
Well, Lauren wouldn't say so, but...
So Lauren saw
I
it
would.
and hired you and stole all your best stuff.
Well, anyway, it worked out.
So, the scene we just saw with Michael Jordan, how did that work out? How did you get Michael Jordan to be there, and what was it? I mean, it's just...
Well, he was the host, of course.
Yes, okay. But he agreed to this?
Oh, God, yeah. Michael Jordan is amazing, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
And did you know that he's very confident? It just was, Stewart had no idea who he was, yes, Michael J. Protect your anonymity. And, I know that, just must think all the time, I'm not as good as everybody else. I'm not going to score any points. Well, not really. And I go like, Michael, denial ain't just the river in Egypt. And, it was just like fucking perfect. And I knew and then on the air, it was in dress, he cracked up a little too much. I said, don't. And he tried not to, and he kept it, but him trying to not to was the tension. So I'm on air, so the thing with doing a live show is that sometimes it peaks on air and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
And when it does, oh boy, you're so happy.
So can you tell the story about how that character evolved, or that came?
Well, yeah, my wife's in recovery, and so I used to go, and I still do it every once in a while, go to Al-Anon, which is for family members and friends of alcoholics. And I got a lot out of it. And I found a lot of the meetings very funny. And there was a sort of a Stewart character who said, I know the higher power put this apartment in my life. I'm like, oh, Jesus fucking Christ. And so I remember thinking this guy's an idiot. And then, like about a week later, I remember it was a regular meeting that I go to before I go to the show. And a regular meeting, and the next week or 2 weeks later, he said something that just hit me. That just meant so much to me. And I went, oh, I see. You can learn stuff from everybody. And, you know, I had been always taught, neither of my parents went to college, and my dad didn't graduate high school, but we were education, and, you know, in 1957, when Sputnik went up, Americans were terrified, Russians were ahead of us in space, and the Soviets, and they put up the satellite, and they had nuclear weapons. My parents marched us into our living room and said, you boys are going to study math and science so we can beat the Soviets. And I thought that was a lot of pressure to put on a 6-year-old.
Yeah, and you're a scientist, right?
But my brother and I were obedient Jewish sons, and we studied math science. My brother was the first in our family to go to college, went to MIT, got a degree in physics, and became a photographer. I went to Harvard. Now this is during a period when it was a lot easier for a white male to get into Harvard. That period was from the founding of Harvard in 1638 until last year. I graduated and became a comedian. But we beat the Soviets. You're welcome.
Is it still the Al Franken decade?
It's the Al Franken millennium.
So how did that whole thing come out?
About what?
The Al Franken decade.
The decade was okay. That was what happened to that was the 70s was the me decade, and then everyone was predicting what's the 80s going to be. And if you were an expert on energy, it was going to be the energy decade. And I just realized it was going to be the me decade again, because everyone said it was going to be about what I'm about. And so I just said, okay, it's the Al Franken decade, and that's how that came about.
All right, so the last thing I want to ask about is about SNL is the satellite on your head.
Right, satellite dish. There's an ABET strike. They're the union that the National Association of
They're the
Broadcast
television technicians.
And the technicians. And ENG crew, electronic news gathering crews, were being cut at NBC from 5, which is amazing now if you think about it, a crew of 5, which was the uplink truck, the audio, the sound guy, the cameraman, the correspondent, and the producer. It's 5. And they were going to cut it to 3. And they were getting rid of, I guess they still needed the uplink truck, but I think they were getting rid of the sound guy or something, and the camera guy and the sound guy were the same guy now. Anyway, they reduced it, and so it was an ABET strike. So to me, it was like, okay, well, the logical extension of this is a one-man mobile uplink unit. So that's what I did, and I got the satellite is the dish is just a flying saucer for that's what you sled in. I don't think anybody here in Dallas sleds, but we have snow.
We
up
get
north.
snow like, well, a little bit, and then
Yeah, but
of course we have a power grid.
no one
issue.
has a sled or a flying saucer here. Why would you have it? Anyway, so and so it was a flying saucer that you go down on. And it was a pump, like a basketball pump. Was the thing sticking out. And I had this harness that looked like a Steadicam harness, but I actually had a cameraman, and I directed it. And that was it developed, the character kept getting very badly hurt. At the end of that, and a vulture comes. And we had a vulture, and we did a life mask of me. A life mask, you know what a life mask is?
No.
A life mask is you make a mold, and so we had me in the thing, but it was really a life mask. So we had a vulture handler, and we had a vulture land on me, and we put a dead chicken in there, and the vulture. The vulture actually picked my glasses up. It's hilarious.
And this was your idea?
Huh?
This was your idea to do this to yourself?
Yeah. He got struck by lightning. He got everything happened to the satellite guy, and he also got addicted to pain pills because it's so heavy. He had a real through line on this guy.
Sounds like a feature film. So, why did you
And
decide?
that, I would say, is a Kovacs kind of thing. That guy, yeah.
That's why I picked it. Very nice.
Yeah.
So, how did you decide to separate from Saturday Night Live?
Well, okay, so I did 15 seasons. I did the first 5. I left when Lauren left, came back when Lauren came back, did 10 more. I wanted to do Update, and I didn't get it. And Norm Macdonald got it, and that was the right choice, I think. And so I decided to leave because it was time, and that's when I wrote. That's when I wrote Rush Limbaugh's Big Fat Idiot and Other Observations. And that's when I really became. I wrote a lot of the political sketches in those 15 seasons with Jim Downey. And Jim is a brilliant writer, and he's kind of a moderate conservative. He was a Republican. He's a never Trumper, of course, because he's smart. But we didn't really feel that it was the job of the show to have a political viewpoint. We just felt we should do well-observed political satire and reward people for knowing stuff and not punish them for, not knowing stuff. And that was kind of our credo. And I loved the stuff we did. But when I left, I just said, okay, now I can do what I want to do, and my politics were. And at the time, I saw that Limbaugh was dangerous, and he was dividing people. The fairness doctrine went away in '88,
Yes.
and he took advantage of it, and he lied all the time, and he was sexist, and homophobic, and he was racist, and he's just created, he got the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Trump because without Limbaugh, there's no Trump.
No doubt. You think about, like, the title of the book, Lies, right?
Lies and Lying Liars was the next book I did, and that was the next book of that sort.
But that's Rush Limbaugh lying all the time set the stage for Trump lying all the time. I think it's
I was basically saying that there's all this right-wing disinformation coming out. It was very dangerous, and I don't know what's happened to that.
Well, it hasn't gone away. So after doing that, you do the book. Do you want to talk about the Undecided show? The show you did for Comedy Central?
No, it's Indecision.
I'm sorry, my bad. Indecision.
Yeah, 92 I did, the networks had stopped like giving 4 hours a night to conventions, and they were starting to do like 1 hour or 2. And so I decided for Comedy Central to do 4 hours a night. And this is the precursor of The Daily Show and of and Bill Maher and all this stuff. So my format was, we carried the feed of the speeches, and I had Roy Blunt Jr., who's a brilliant satirist and humorist. We just sat in a bar lounger and watched the other networks. So if anything important happened, he'd tell me. And we had guests, and I did commentary on the speeches, and it was 4 hours a night. And so yeah, it was kind of a precursor to the stuff on Comedy Central and the political stuff.
I think in a sense it's really important as a way of moving forward, and also being that in Saturday Night Live, while things were political, they weren't so much of an sort of advocacy in a certain kind of way, and in this show you can say what you really felt, right?
Yeah.
You could be more partisan, and so in moving how you can affect culture with your comedy, like that show is really kind of important, I think.
Yeah, and that the books really, actually, I've had so many people come up to me and say that Rush Limbaugh or Lies and Lying Liars really changed their politics. And that's, that's very gratifying. Or got them involved, interested in it. And I had people, staffers in the Senate from other staffs, and said this is what got me interested in politics.
And it sold pretty well.
They sold incredibly well. Lies and Lying Liars especially sold well because O'Reilly had Fox sue me.
Yeah.
It was amazing because it was it was Lies and Lying Liars who tell them a fair and balanced look at the right. So they sued me because the subtitle had fair and balanced in it. And the thing about a trademark, using a trademark in a title, is as long as you're referring to what the thing is, you're fine. And so it was ridiculous. They had no case, and they were laughed out of court. It was great. It was so fun. And I had Floyd Abrams, the best First Amendment lawyer in the country, and he told me not to go to the court. So I didn't go, and he calls me up and he says, "Al, we won." I said, "Floyd, a chimp could have won this case." And later they did on court. There was a documentary about this thing, and he was said Al, I called Al, and he said a monkey could have won this case. And I called him up, and when I saw the doc, and I said, "No, you said chimp." Or I said chimp. I said chimp. He goes, "Oh, what's the difference?" I said, "Chimp is funnier." And then Floyd actually testified about Citizens United in front of the Judiciary Committee, and so he testified, and I said, "Floyd, do you remember?" And then that was part of the hearing.
So it's in the congressional record.
Him acknowledging that he fucked up, misquoting what I said.
So, going from this show, and then the books, and then Air America, which I thought was just amazing. Want to talk about how you got involved in Air America? And to me, the power of radio is really important. I think the right has really capitalized on it much better than we have. And the show you did was just absolutely amazing. It was just...
Well, thanks. I did that for 3 years, And we had 2 million distinct listeners a week.
2 million cool listeners.
Well, we had a lot of listeners. I mean, Rush had 20 million distinct listeners a week. But we had a lot more stations than we had. We had terrible signals. I don't know how the signal was here in Dallas, but in Minneapolis we had a weak signal. And,
We got it.
yeah. And, but that was a gas. I did it 3 hours a day. And that was, and I thought it was important. It was important. It's a long story about how the guy who found it was the first. We didn't have the financing he said we had. It was really not, Rupert Murdoch spent billions on getting Fox started. And we didn't have any billboards. You need billboards on radio because people are driving, you see, and they see billboards and they turn on the radio. And we had terrible signals, and it was too bad. But then my last show was saying I'm going to run for the Senate, and so you can't run and have a radio show at the same time. So that's what I did.
So, why did you decide to run for the Senate?
It was a little personal. Paul Wellstone we were friends, and he was a great senator. Paul really voted the way he believes, a great progressive. And in 2002, he was running for his third term. And in October, he had to vote. There was a vote on the war in Iraq, and he was against it. A large majority of Minnesotans were for it. And Paul was in a deadlock race with Norm Coleman, the Republican. And Paul said to me and to other friends, I'm going to vote against the war, and I think that will be the end of my career. And so he did, and in the next poll he was up by 7. Because people in Minnesota really like politicians who vote the way they believe. So Paul then died in a plane crash with his wife and daughter and 3 aides and 2 pilots, like less than 2 weeks before the election. And Coleman won. And about 3 months after he was in office, he did an interview in Roll Call magazine that said, to be blunt, I'm a 99% improvement over Paul Wellstone. And I read that, and I went, I wonder who's going to beat this guy. And I thought maybe it could be me. So I moved the show out to Minneapolis. And in 2006, I went around the state supporting other Democrats. And I saw that people in Minnesota really responded to me. And I clobbered Coleman, the incumbent, by 312 votes.
Thank God for those 312 people.
Thank God for that. It was the narrowest clobbering in history.
So, going to the Senate, I think one of the sort of challenges you have is how do people take a comedian seriously? So, as a serious comedian, how did you go about changing people's perception of you?
Well, when I first got there, it took me 6 months to get there because in Minnesota, you have the Supreme Court has to finally sign off before you get certified. And the Republicans wanted to keep me out of there as long as possible. When I finally got there, I was the 60th Democrat. That's how we got the Affordable Care Act. And my team says to me, don't be funny. Don't be funny. And I said, I got it, I understand. Put my head down, do the work, show people I'm there to do the work. I said, don't be funny. I got it. Don't be funny on floor speeches, don't be funny in hearings, don't be funny. I said, I got it, don't be funny, but I didn't really internalize it. So, the first day I got sworn in, and then I go to my office for the first time. I hadn't been to the office, and I'm going to take the subway there. And I go to my desk, and I get there's a slip of paper there, and I learned that one of your duties as a senator is to write congratulatory notes to constituents, and this was for Ruth Anderson of Marshall, Minnesota, who was turning 110. So I got out my official stationery for the first time. I wrote, "Dear Ruth, you have a bright future."
Sounds like a Kovacs paper.
And so my new assistant comes in, takes it to my new chief of staff, who's in a flash. "What is this?" I said, "Well, it's a joke." He goes, "You think Ruth Anderson will find it funny?" And I said, "She's 110. I don't know." He goes, "Okay, do you think her family will find it funny?" And I said, "Oh yeah." And I started thinking about her 90-year-old son reading it. You have a bright future, what's kind of mean, but it's funny anyway. But what I found was that no, obviously, as any human interaction, having a sense of humor really helps. So it did, and I was able to get a lot of bipartisan stuff done.
So that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because clearly you are progressive and you believe in progressive causes, but you were able to work with people across the aisle in a kind of one-to-one human way, which I think is incredibly admirable. And how did you do that?
Well, I mean, look, the Republicans in the Senate at least voted for the infrastructure bill this time. I mean, there's still some cooperation. None of them voted for the Inflation Reduction Act. Okay, my first bill was, I got there late. I went to the inaugural. I've done a lot of USO shows, so I was friends with the IAVA, the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, with them in their head. And so I went at the Obama inaugural, I went to their event, and I met this guy with Luis Montalban, who wounded Iraq vet, and he was there in his wheelchair with the service dog, Tuesday. And he said to me, I couldn't be here for Tuesday. And I asked him what Tuesday did for him, and he said, well, Tuesday, and before he got the dog, he had been completely isolated. He was drinking, couldn't leave his apartment in Brooklyn. Then he got matched with this dog. He just got this letter saying, you come to Connecticut, get matched with the dog. He gets Tuesday. I said, what does Tuesday do for you? He said, well, he can sense when I'm going to have a panic attack before I do. And he'll start nuzzling me and prevent it. If I have a debilitating nightmare, he will jump on the bed and wake me up, so I don't have to go through that. He can actually remind me to take my medication by grabbing me if I don't. And he said, I also learned that people don't really like going up to a wounded vet who's like, a scruffy-looking wounded vet, but they do like going up to a scruffy-looking wounded vet with a beautiful dog. And so he broke my isolation. You have to take a dog out twice a day. So, and he started going, he went to school, got his master's, and so I made it I had 6 months before I got seated. And so I made it my business to learn all about service dogs. And my first bill that I dropped right away was to do a study to match 200 vets with PTSD with service dogs and see what the cost benefits were. And I went right to Johnny Isaacson, the chairman of the Veterans Committee, Republican, or ranking on it. and he immediately co-sponsored with me, immediately passed. It was a 3-year study. It took, VA fucked up many times. It took 10 years, but at the end of the 10 years, I wasn't there anymore. At the end of the 10 years, the cost benefits, unbelievable. 20 vets a day kill themselves, commit suicide. And this is, and now because of this bill, vets who want a service dog will be able to get a service dog. So, there are a lot of things I did like that, where, you know, that's not partisan. It's not partisan.
So, speaking of partisan, what do you think of Ted Cruz?
I have said that I probably like Ted Cruz more than most of my colleagues like Ted Cruz, and I hate Ted Cruz. He's awful. I mean, he's just amazing.
He's awful, just leave it at that.
Well, he lies like that. I mean, he's just awful. And be nice, you know, if you could beat him in 2 years. Be nice, by the way, it'd be nice if you could, I don't want to make this a partisan event. I mean, that's the thing, is I don't know if there's a partisan bone in Ernie Kovacs' body. But if you're...
I'll say it, please vote!
No, more than that. More than that. Please door knock. Please phone bank. You know, I was never a big fan of Republicans. But the Republican Party now has ceased, it just stopped participating in good faith in the democratic process. And this election is so important. We can win here if we turn out the vote. The way to turn out the vote.
We have great candidates, and it's important to, as
Not
I
to
say,
make this partisan.
yeah.
So if you're a Republican here, the election is November 10th.
So, is there any way in the universe, because you're such a good senator, that you would do this again?
I've been asked a lot that tonight already. I'm considering it. I'm considering it. If I do, you all have to max out.
I believe we could make something happen for you here in Dallas. But it's clear, I mean, clearly in your interactions in the Senate, you put forth some very powerful, very human, very important legislation. You were effective in what you're doing, and there's so important to have good people in those positions.
I agree with all that. So yeah, it was bizarre what happened. So leave it at that.
But we want you back, and we want you to... And not only that, the other thing I want to say is that there are very few people who can confront people who are lying and have all of that and tell them to their face, you're lying, this is what is not true. And it's really important for you to keep doing that.
Yeah, I was never afraid to do that, and it needs to be done. So, anyway, yeah.
So, I think I have something to give you.
Okay. Wow, okay. That looks like a murder weapon. I don't know. I could see it sort of in reverse backstage. So cool. we have a cigar here. He did cigarette commercials while smoking a cigar. Yeah, isn't that cool?
And I know that you have a lot of trophies in your office, but you have nothing that looks like this.
Not a thing. Do you have a box to ship it? Because this.
We will make sure.
Okay. Yeah, great. Because I don't want to take this on the plane.
See your next sitting somebody next to you and say, "Oh, look at this."
I guess but this is amazing. Thank you. Again, amazing. Thank you.
Here it is. Before we go, so we're going to show this movie.
Yeah. Okay. This is a documentary. Jeez.
Here we go. Story.
It's a documentary. I guess it was made in 2000, over a period in like 2004, 5, and maybe some 6, by the Penny Bakers, who've done some of the most amazing.
The War Room.
The Dylan one. Dylan
Back.
Back. Yeah, I mean, amazing. And they kind of invented the cinema verite kind of.
Monterey Pop.
Yeah, Monterey Pop. And this it's partly Air America, and there's 2004 certainly in this. And then it kind of ends with me considering running for the Senate. And I'm back in, I hadn't seen it in years until there was a festival of their stuff in Sag Harbor, Long Island, and I went to see it. And I think you'll enjoy it. There's some really, really good stuff in it, I think, and I think it ends on a funny note to me, which is, I don't know if the joke is in there, but my dad, one of the reasons that I became a comedian, maybe the main reason, is my dad loved the Borscht Belt comedians. And he loved on Carson and on Ed Sullivan show, right? They especially loved Buddy Hackett.
Buddy Hackett. Yeah.
And so my dad, in 1997, I'm on a plane from New York to LA, and Buddy Hackett's on the plane. So I go up to him, and I say, Buddy, Mr. Hackett, I'm so sorry to interrupt your flight, but I'm just an enormous fan of yours. My dad just worshipped you. And Buddy says, guy goes into a doctor's office, he's got a dot on his forehead. Doc says, oh no, I've seen this before. In 6 weeks you're gonna have a penis growing out of your forehead. The guy says, well Doc, cut it off. The Doc says, I can't cut it off, it's attached to your brain. The guy says, so what you're saying to me, Doc, is that in 6 weeks, every morning when I wake up and look in the mirror, I'm gonna see a penis growing out of my forehead. Doc says, no, you won't see it, the balls will cover your eyes. So that's why I became a comedian. So this thing ends, and I can't remember whether. So I'm back in Minnesota, and I get invited to Temple Israel, or my temple, and I'm in the synagogue. I'm in the sanctuary. The rabbis with me, and we do thing. I'm talking about. I'm doing an event like this, but it's in the sanctuary. And at one point, I say, the reason I became a comedian, Buddy Hackett, and I tell this joke.
In the synagogue.
Yeah, I thought, like, it's a very warm story about my dad. And the rabbi, and so I think this thing ends with me kind of, I think, so I'm not sure if the joke is in there. I don't think it is, but I think you see me kind of going like, yeah, I don't know if I do this, if I can do that, if I can be fun. I don't know, and it's a funny note to end on, which is me going like, is this going to be worth it? Can I do this? And I ended up doing it, of course, but at the time I didn't know. We didn't know.
Well, it's a really good film, good filmmakers, good story, and you really see a lot of the Air America experience.
You see this on the Air America. You also see what an angel my wife is.
Yes.
And how weird I am in certain respects. Including, there's some shot of me like in front of my apartment building, just lying on the sidewalk, just laying on my back, which I would do. I don't know why. It's just kind of stuff I do. But it's like literally lying on the sidewalk, just waiting for, I don't know, it's so weird to look at all these years later. I think you'll enjoy it.
So and the film has been restored. So this is a new version that they did for us, which is really great. So it's going to take just a moment for them to take these down and move the screen back, because this is a different format than we've been watching. But in just a minute, we're going to see Al Franken and God's book. Al, thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you, Bart. Thank you for amazing. You did a lot.